The sources panel can be used as a great place to store images, anything. Now I'm using gradients in this example. So sources, just go down the bottom, there's a little add there and click and you can see what happens. It adds that design there. And I can use it later with the clone brush. This doesn't need to be a gradient. I'm using gradients as an example. It could be images, it could be text, it could be anything, literally any sort of warped and wonderful designs, photos, whatever. They can all be very quickly added to sources. I'm just using this gradient as an example. Also, it could be any gradient. Select a different gradient. I can then add that as well. And you can see you've got that design added there. So let's remove everything now. Let's start right at the beginning. Now I could use an image, just a standard photo, bring any photo in. But also what you can do is you can go to layer and new layer and start completely afresh. But as mentioned, it could be an existing photo as well. It doesn't need to be that, or a gradient. Then go here to the tools panel and clone brush tool. Select that and set the size. Personally, I prefer along this control bar, I go with not aligned. You can set aligned up. But with the global, I prefer it with not aligned. Please check out my earlier video on the difference between aligned and not aligned. Go with global, and you can also set up a rotation and 190 or the scale, whatever you want for the scale, 100%, and then just apply it. And you can see absolutely nothing happens at this point. The reason being, it needs to have a source, apply it, selected here. So if you apply it and you've got nothing selected, it will not work. It will just not work. It still won't work because you need to set up and define a source. So just double click on that and you can do this with all of them. You can see this little round dot there. Just simply go to the center or at the edge. Doesn't matter. If you want to define your center of reference to be at the edge, that is as good as do it in the center. It's what you're used to after a while of using it. But I'm just going to go there in the center and then it will disappear. And you can see it's set up there. Double click again and again, go there. I think it's nice to be consistent, but you might find, say, a particular part of an image that you like, you know, that you think, oh, that's got very bit of detail, a lot of color. I'm going to use that as my reference point, and that's what it will use each and every time as the start point when you apply your brush. So now if I go and apply it, you can see the line. Now I'm using a brush over here, a texture brush. You can use any of these brushes. I'm just using texture brush just as an example, but you could use stars, sprays, pens, pencils, any of them, and just apply it. Now the one thing when you use not aligned, each and every time you apply it, it will go back to that source point. So you have to remember that. So if you want to apply it, just apply it continuously. If you release it, it will start again at that original start point, which you may or may not want. But you can see what happens. It applies it. And it's applying it to a layer. Always needs a layer. But the great thing about the sources is that you can just go and create another layer. So layer and then new layer and apply it again. And now that is on a layer. You can't do that unless you set up these sources. Working with layers, it becomes quite tricky with the clone brush. So I think it's really good have to set up all these sources, or as many as you want. Maybe hundreds. I don't know if there's a limit. You've also got options here for rotate. So say you've got a gradient here and you can see the line there. You see the lines going 45 degrees-ish. Well, you can always turn around and say, oh, let's set up the angle, change the angle. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't rotate the sources. Be nice if it did, so you could see where you're, but you just have to just apply it, and you can then just see now, you can see that line that was in that, it's gone 45 degrees. Now, if you notice what I did, I released it by accident and applied it again. But there it is, that line. So it's at 45 degrees. And you can do that and create multiple gradient combinations simply by doing that. Another option, of course, you're using the clone brush. Like all of the brushes in Affinity Photo, you've got the options for opacity. You've also got blend modes. So you can turn around and say, oh, let's go for difference. So difference. And you can apply it with difference. And then you can see that line again. You've got that line, that gradient. But this time when you apply it, you've got that. It applies the difference. And you apply it again, it uses difference again on that brush stroke. And you can create all kinds of interesting combinations. But you've still got multiple brushes over here, multiple sources, as well as multiple brushes. So you can select another. And as long as it's got that circle in the centre, it will work. If it doesn't, it won't work. You can see then, if I apply it there, and that was the start point, that we're using that start point there. And you can apply it again and again and again and build up some very complex, colourful designs. Splatters all over the image like that. And again, you can always go over here, it's a layer. And as a layer means you can move it. You can reposition it. You can turn around and say over here, go to the move tool and just move that. So it doesn't have, now of course, it doesn't know what's beyond the edge, so it cuts it off. It's a pity, but you can resize it, you can rotate it and combine them. All kinds of different combinations of layers. You can always then, of course, hold down the Alt Option key and duplicate that design. Duplicate that. Hold it down multiple times and build up very complex sort of designs like that just by doing there. But you've still got all these additional sources which you can then use and apply. And you can apply it again. Just go back to the clone brush, select there and apply again. And again, it's still using difference, still using not aligned, still got that rotation. You can also set the scale up. So you can turn around and say, well, I don't want it to be just 100%. 100% would just match this, the size of what it was. 300% means it's obviously 3 times bigger. And now what happens, of course, you're going to get more. If it's like this one here, you'll get more and more obviously of the green and the blues before you get to that, the purple. So you'll see the blues, but then you really have to stretch it very far before you get to that sort of pink. And you can apply it multiple times. And again, it's just a layer. Go to effects, you can just click there, go to bevel emboss, and you can add some bevel into it. Create some very interesting sort of 3-dimensional textures to your design and close. And of course, at any point, you can always go to latent, layer, and then just merge visible. Merge it all into one layer if that's what you want. So that's the clone brush and sources. Really great way of combining colourful designs, any designs. And as mentioned, doesn't have to be these gradients. Gradients are only an example. Could be anything. Could be images, blurred images, because you could apply effects. Got this? Simply go to the gradient tool, apply a gradient, create another gradient there, any of the gradients. Go to filters, apply distort, deform, and you can distort that. You can warp it and distort it. And once you've done that, you can then quickly go and add that as well. Make certain you apply it, otherwise and then click there and you can see the design has been added there. Double click that with the clone brush and set it up. And now you can use it and apply that. And that warped effect will be added in as well as with the difference, as well as the not aligned, rotation and scale to create infinite amount of combinations of designs. And again, it could be images, text and much, much more. Hope you found this of interest. Please let me know in the comments below. Also, there'll be new videos on the clone brush as well. There's many other things you can do with the clone brush. Please check those out.